Welcome to Infidelity Secret. Your support is everything to us. 90% of you haven't subscribed yet, so please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so we can keep bringing you amazing content. Also, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave your city in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's tale. As we headed toward the airport, the waning light cast sweeping shadows on the deserted roads. I was engrossed in the soft hum of tires on asphalt as the outer world dissolved into blue and gold stripes. A deer darted into the road, and I was ready to close my eyes when I was startled upright by a blur of movement. The driver gave the wheel a violent yank. My body stumbled. My ears were filled with the shriek of tires and then silence. All I saw when I woke up was white, sterile, blinding. The machines beeping, the fresh antiseptic smell, pain. My head throbbed, my ribs hurt, and my body would not respond to my attempts to move. The soft yet forceful voice of a woman broke through the mental haze. Leaning into my line of sight, she continued, "You're in a military hospital in Frankfurt?" A nurse. She had a kind gaze. My throat was dry and parched as I swallowed. How long? How long?" After making some adjustments to my IV, she answered, 5 days. The room's air felt too heavy. My recollections were fragments of a puzzle that I was unable to piece together. The question clawed at my chest as I pushed my lips to form it. "Is my spouse present?" A pause. Her face briefly flashed something unreadable before she responded. "No, ma'am." I felt sick to my stomach. "Are you aware of his whereabouts?" "As soon as you were admitted, we informed him," she stated in a measured tone. "He knows you have a condition?" With shaky fingers, I groped for my phone from the stack of possessions in a clear plastic bag next to me. My touch caused the screen to light up. No calls were missed, no messages. I called him on the phone. Once it rang, twice. Then, "Hi," his tone, far away, unreadable. I took a deep breath and clutched the phone as if it were the only thing holding me grounded. "Where are you, Ethan?" A pause. The breath was raspy. Then he said, "I'm so sorry, Claire. I was at a loss for words. Our baby is no longer with us." The words broke like glass inside me. My heart twisted. My throat tightened each breath. "No," I stifled. "No, that's not. Ethan, she was all right. I was all right. His voice broke as he said, "I don't know what happened. Everything was fine for a minute, and then the doctor said it was the cord. They were unable to save her. The hospital room's walls enclosed me. My hands became numb. A grief so overwhelming that I felt like I was drowning made my body quake. Are you all right?" I pushed myself out. He said, I don't know. I've returned home. I couldn't fly to you because of them. Burning hot on my chilled flesh, tears ran down my face. When can I expect to see you?" His voice was hardly audible above a whisper as he stated, "I don't know yet. But just take a nap, Claire, please. Give yourself time to recover." However, how might I recover from this? I was eventually given the all clear to be sent home 2 weeks later. Ethan was waiting at the airbase when I landed, and the military had set up a medevac. He appeared thinner and hollower, as if he had aged 10 years in just 2 weeks. He encircled me with his arms, but the warmth that had been there was gone. He sat with me while I was in the hospital, getting better. We didn't communicate much. However, I eventually questioned, Did you give her a name?" One afternoon, Ethan's mouth clenched. He balled his hands into fists. However, he lowered his shoulders and spoke in a broken voice. "Yes," he said in a whisper. "I gave her the name Hope." We both went apart in an instant. Months went by. The sadness settled into the voids between us, but it didn't go away. Clinging to what remained of the life we had created, we depended on one another. We were assigned to Germany a year later. It was meant to be a new beginning with new people and settings. We took trips, worked nonstop, and looked for joy in the ruins of our broken history. Another move, this time to Fort Lewis, Washington, came 3 years later. The house was larger. It's quieter in the neighborhood. We felt as though we had a home once more. It should have made me feel better. I ought to have sensed something. However, something was lacking. In order to meet the other wives, Ethan urged me to attend a welcome party at the officers' club. I consented, leaving him to unpack at home. He was sitting on the back deck, staring at nothing when I got back. I leaned down to give him a cheek kiss and said, "Hey, unpack a lot?" He clenched his jaw. "Indeed, enough." I scowled. "Is everything all right?" He gave a slow, almost forced response. "Just a difficult day." I refrained from pushing, then number. However, something didn't feel right. He was aloof the following morning, distracted. He hardly looked at me and hardly tasted his coffee. I whispered, "Talk to me, Ethan." He said, "I just have a lot on my mind." Without saying another word, he walked out of the house. I discovered him in the bathroom hours later, bent over the basin, his hands clutching the sides as if he were struggling to keep himself together. He was wearing white knuckles. "What's going on, Ethan?" I moved closer and asked. He pivoted. He had a pallid face. He parted his lips, then shut them again, swallowed forcefully. Then he passed me and went away without saying anything. He didn't go to bed that night. His face was covered in flickering shadows from the TV when I saw him dozing off on the couch. I softly shook his shoulder and murmured, "Come to bed, Ethan." His eyes didn't even open. "I'm all right here." I got a lump in my throat. I was clueless as to what had changed. I learned 3 days later. I discovered a wooden chest hidden beneath a stack of old linens in the guest room while I was unpacking the final few boxes. I knew right away. A box of old letters and mementos from my early years belonged to me. However, I discovered something more when I opened it. A certificate of birth. As I scanned the document, my breath seized in my throat. Name, Hope weight, 7 pounds, 6 ounces. Date of birth, the day Ethan and I lost her, 19 inches in length. Claire Reynolds, mother-father. Not sure, my heart was racing. My vision became hazy. Not sure? I looked at the other documents, legal records, a certificate of adoption. I repeatedly read the words in an attempt to comprehend them. There was yet hope. They had given her away. And Ethan, well, Ethan didn't know. The room spun around me as I put a palm to my mouth. I didn't know what to do next, and my world was falling apart. After Lydia went, the silence was more burdensome than anything I had ever experienced. Thick and oppressive, it hung in the room and encircled me like a burden I was unable to remove. I wasn't really paying attention to the late-night infomercial that was droning on the television as it flickered in the darkened room. I was too preoccupied with going over everything again. The certificate of birth, the adoption documents, Lydia's absence from the hospital during my most critical time. I wished I could follow her, to demand the truth at that very moment. But I hesitated for some reason. I wasn't prepared. Not quite yet. I needed answers, but first I had to look for them on my own. That night, I hardly slept at all. The small written footsteps on that page, evidence of a life I never knew, were visible every time I closed my eyes. Evidence of such a profound betrayal that I was unsure of how to move on. I had already decided by the time the first rays of daylight came in through the window, I had to learn the truth. Everything. When I got to the base, it was silent, and I could hear my footsteps as I made my way to my office via the deserted hallways. With my hands shaking a little, I entered a request for 5 years' worth of hospital records and logged into my computer. I knew it wouldn't be that simple, of course. Military medical records weren't simply accessible, like old emails. However, I had enough contacts to get things started. I did something I never would have imagined doing as I waited. I looked up Lydia's name in public record databases to see if there was anything out of the ordinary. Travel background, monetary exchanges, appointments for medical care. At that moment, I discovered something that chilled me to the bone. The military hospital where Lydia had informed me she lost our baby was very different from the private maternity clinic where she was treated, according to the paperwork. The night before Hope was born, she had made a check. Spent 2 days there, then, without a child, they left. The adoption documents I discovered seemed brutally real all of a sudden. This was no unfortunate mishap. This was Lydia's strategy. With my heart thumping into my ribs and my hands hard on the steering wheel, I drove home in a daze. When I got there, Lydia's car was parked in the driveway. I hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. She appeared worn out but calm as she stood in the kitchen with a cup of coffee in her hands. When she spotted me, she didn't even bat an eye. She whispered, "You didn't come home last night?" I walked forward to the counter and pressed my palms hard against it, ignoring the remark. "Our daughter is where?" Before I could stop myself, the words escaped my lips. I didn't regret them, though. Lydia's knuckles whitened as her fingers clenched around the coffee mug. "Don't, Fred." She was ready to make an excuse, but my voice sliced right through it. "Don't tell me lies. No more." She let out a slow breath, briefly closed her eyes, and put down the mug. "This is not how I wanted you to find out." That isn't a response. Her shoulders slumped, and I noticed something change in her for the first time since I had discovered the box. "Fred, she's gone. She's got a family. She is secure." My chest constricted. "Why? What made you do this?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if that was due to remorse or something else. "Because I had no other option," I yelled, "There's always an option," and slammed my hand into the counter. "Lydia, you told me she passed away. You allowed me to mourn a living child. I lost my own daughter because of you." Her breath was shaky as she swallowed hard. "I was afraid I would lose everything. Of losing you." The remarks were like a kick to the stomach. I was already lost to her. She simply wasn't aware of it yet. From there, the discussion took a turn for the worst. She acknowledged that she had planned the adoption before Hope was even born, claiming that she couldn't be a mother and that it was best for us. It was then that I became aware of something horrifying. Not only did Lydia make that choice without me, but she did so against me. She had entirely removed me from the picture, and it got me thinking, what else was she keeping from me? Without saying another word, I walked out of the house. I got in my car and went for a drive. Before I pulled into the parking lot of a tiny legal practice outside the base, I had no idea where I was heading. The attorney was an elderly man who had witnessed numerous military families fall apart. I told him everything. His face unreadable, he listened without interruption. He exhaled deeply when I was done. "You realize that this won't be simple?" I gave a nod. "It doesn't matter how difficult it is. I must know whether I can locate her." His eyes grew a little softer. "It will be an uphill battle from a legal standpoint. The adoption was finalized. Since you weren't identified as the father, you were never granted parental rights in the first place." I balled my fists up. "There must be a method." The attorney paused, then leaned forward. "There may be. However, it will require time." Along with a folder full of legal documents, I left the office feeling purposeful, something I hadn't felt in years. My goal was to locate my daughter, and Lydia would be held responsible for everything when I did. I didn't go home that night. Just outside of town, I stayed at a budget motel. The possibilities rushed through my thoughts. I got a call from Lydia, then twice, then an SMS message. "Come home, please. We must speak." I didn't answer. For the first time in our whole marriage, I felt like I had nothing more to say. I spent hours staring at my phone the following morning. Additional messages. "Please, Fred, I need you to understand, even though I know you're upset." "I'm afraid, Fred." I paused at that last message. "Are you afraid?" "Of what?" I was angry with her for all the right reasons. Fear, however, was not what I had anticipated. Even though I wanted to ignore her, I had to hear everything, if only to make sure of the extent of this betrayal. I took a car home. I needed to hear the truth, not because I wanted to make things better, which I knew was impossible. Everything. Straight from Lydia's mouth. Lydia was seated on the couch with her hands clenched together in her lap when I entered the room. When she heard my footsteps, she looked up, her eyes blazing with relief. "You returned," she muttered. "Not for you," I answered icily. "For clarifications." Lydia nodded despite flinching. "That is how much I owe you." I stood close to the doorway with my arms crossed. "Begin at the beginning, and Lydia, don't tell me lies. Never again." She wiped at her eyes and inhaled deeply before speaking. "While you were deployed, I discovered I was expecting a child. Fred, I was afraid. I wasn't prepared to become a mother, and you were gone. I was unsure about how to handle it on my own. You weren't by yourself, I yelled. You made the decision to be. She gave a nod. I did. I believed it to be the only option. Therefore, I made that decision. So what? Did you go behind my back, made adoption arrangements without ever informing me? Lydia faltered in her voice. I believed I was keeping you from becoming resentful of me, from being stuck in something you didn't want to be in. I gaped at her in shock. That choice was made for me by you. You believed I wouldn't want my child, so you took her away. Lydia closed her eyes tightly. I believed I was acting appropriately. I had the thought, I remarked sourly. Lydia, you should have done a lot of things. However, you didn't. And now I'm not even sure where she is because of you. She broke down in tears. I can make this right? I squinted. How? Lydia paused. Then she said in a voice so tiny I nearly missed it, I am aware of her location. My heart stopped beating. You what? With a look of guilt on her face, she nodded slowly. I've always known where she was. I continued to communicate with the agency even after the adoption was closed. I was unable to really let go. I monitored her. What I was hearing was unbelievable. And you never considered telling me? She gave a head shake. I was afraid. What if she didn't want to be brought back, even if you managed to find her? What if she was content with her current situation? I brushed a hand through my hair and turned aside. Lydia, you have no right to decide that for me, or for her. There was silence between us. Then, at last, I spoke once more. Where is she? Lydia paused, but she let out a shaky breath as she saw the resolve in my eyes. She's in Portland, along with her adoptive family. Lydia eventually handed them a single piece of paper with Hope's adoptive parents' names on it. I knew there was no turning back once I touched it in my hands. The same evening, I packed a bag. Lydia made no attempt to stop me. When I arrived at the door, she said, Fred. I stopped, but I didn't look back. You despise me, she said. I don't blame you either, but please, just leave her alone if you find her and she's content. I didn't respond, as I was unsure if I could. Through the night, I drove. The options were rushing through my head. Would she resemble me? Would my absence cause her to despise me? Does she want to know me at all? I had reached Portland by daybreak. By the afternoon, I found myself outside a house that might easily contain my entire future. I paused. I kept my hand on the doorbell, and then, at last, I hit it. A female voice responded, mid-40s, cautionary but kind. May I assist you? She inquired. The lump in my throat was swallowed. I'm trying to find Hope. Her face changed a little. Who are you? Fred is my name. I believe that I am her father. Understanding softened the woman's face. I believe you ought to enter. The house has a lovely atmosphere, filled with the aroma of something baking in the oven and a hint of cinnamon. It was a house. Her house. I was struck with the realization. I followed the woman to the living room. Her name was Anna, the mother she adopted. Where is she? I asked, struggling to maintain a steady voice. She is currently enrolled in school. She will return home in a few hours. 2 hours. Even though I had been waiting for 5 years, it felt like every second was taking forever. Anna must have noticed. She whispered softly, She doesn't know. She is adopted. The words were as cold as ice. What? We always intended to tell her, but the moment never seemed appropriate. It became more difficult as she grew older. I whispered, So, she doesn't even know I exist. Number she doesn't. The hours went by quickly. The front door was then heard. Steps. The sound of a backpack hitting the ground. She called, Hey Mom, who is this? I gasped. I had underestimated her size. Hair that is dark brown, blue eyes, I hope. I felt as though I had been struck in the chest by her voice. Anna got up. This is Fred, I hope. He is a longtime family friend. Hope's head cocked slightly. Hello. I took a swallow, made an effort to grin. Hi, Hope. She looked at me questioningly, then took out her phone and sat on the couch. She didn't recognize me. I had no notion that I had traveled across states, years, and 1,000 miles of sorrow to be in her presence. I took my time, though. They sat with me, ate dinner. I listened to her discuss her favorite book, school, and her goal of becoming a veterinarian. Each word was a present. I was about to depart that night when Anna led me out the door. She whispered, "She's happy, Fred." This is difficult, I know. However, perhaps that suffices. I turned to face the home. Was it? I had no idea. However, I was aware that she was secure. They loved her, and it must be sufficient for the time being. I gave a nod. Look after her. Anna gave a sorrowful smile. I'll. And I didn't turn around as I left, because I knew Hope was right where she was supposed to be for the first time in 5 years.